Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. Artificial intelligence is advancing at a fast pace. Few could have imagined transforming economies, reshaping industries, and redefining how societies function. But according to the UNDP's latest regional report, the Next Great Divergence, this rapid progress may also be fueling a new kind of global divide. As advanced economies race ahead, developing nations, especially in the Asia-Pacific, risk being left behind. The stakes are high, and the choices made now will shape the digital future for billions. So to help us unpack the findings and explore how global cooperation can help close the AI gap, we are joined by Kanni Wignaraja, UN Assistant Secretary General and the UNDP's Regional Director for Asia and the Pacific, here in the studio with us. A big welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So you're here in South Korea to launch the UNDP's latest report, the Next Great Divergence. I wonder, why was Seoul actually chosen as the second stop after Bangkok?
Well, it's because for us, the Republic of Korea is in that group of countries in the Asia Pacific that is a front runner in this area. So even globally, if you look at it, it's in the top 5 or 6 countries in terms of AI readiness. And for UNDP, the interest is applications when it comes to human development. And I couldn't think of a better partner and a better place in order to make that case.
So Seoul must have been a really meaningful choice in that regard. Now, this latest report actually highlights how AI is widening inequality between countries. Could you explain for our viewers what actually do you think is driving this divide, and why is it especially noticeable in the Asia-Pacific region?
Well, you know, I mean, through history, of course, countries have had different trajectories, right? And however, when it came to things like poverty reduction or the spread of electricity, right, or education, countries that were lagging behind had more of a chance and more time to catch up. With AI, the speed is so great that the acceleration of the advanced countries on AI is pushing them so far ahead that many of the countries in our region that are still at the starting blocks, unless special attention is paid there, this divergence can just grow to it just being never a moment of catch-up. So the report looks at those areas in these countries where today policy and investment choices have to be made if they're going to join what should be a very positive race.
So it's not really just about how much access they have, it's about something more structural than that.
Absolutely. So if I take a very fundamental issue, countries in the region with very little digital infrastructure, if you don't have access to the internet, or very few in your country have Wi-Fi access, affordable access, how can you layer an economy that is going to be so influenced by digital and AI? If you take just digital public infrastructure, we have countries like Singapore, like Korea, New Zealand, Australia, Japan, India, that has very strong digital public infrastructure. Then you take the other extreme, take Afghanistan, or take some of our small Pacific countries, where this is just yet a dream. So to me, countries that really need some fundamentals is where we'd like to focus and putting some of those basics in place so that they can at least have some advantage to taking on an AI economy and an AI society.
So speaking of financial and capabilities, we hear that you also conducted a global survey on AI, and we wonder how perceptions differed from countries and income levels as well, and what message could that actually send to policymakers as well?
So last year, UNDP put out a global human development report on AI, and those surveys and that data is something obviously we've used quite a bit to dig deeper into regional either disparities or where some of the gaps closing. And for me, some of the curious things that came out, and it's in our regional report, is how young people see AI. On the one hand, absolutely excited at the use of AI in their daily lives. At the same time, those very young people in our region, very anxious that AI might take on their first jobs, right? And that they'd be displaced before they even enter the labor market. Now, in the middle are people who feel, well, I can do my banking now easier. I can get my pension or my social security better targeted and quicker. I have access now to health and education, learning, knowledge services that I never had before. But then there's a concern that as agentic AI grows, and especially when you combine it with robotics, people are thinking, oh no, it's coming for my job as well. But what we're seeing is that people and societies that are actually getting ahead and reskilling and learning new skills and taking this on is shaping the way AI influences their households, their economies. Or we sit back, we remain anxious, and it shapes us instead.
So it's a mixed situation between excitement, convenience, and also concerns about our living and our jobs.
Absolutely.
As well.
And in fact, I looked at the survey in particular that was conducted here in this country, and you see this contradiction, the contrasts of knowing that there are so many advances here that are benefiting the economy, productivity, learning. At the same time, this worry, is it coming in and confusing the trust with public institutions? Is it actually being helpful to address accountability and look at stronger anti-corruption mechanisms? What about my privacy? Is now my data out there that belongs to some AI chatbot, and am I not in control of my own identity and my own data? So these are, I think, issues that we are learning from countries where AI is more advanced, and it'll help countries coming behind to maybe leapfrog, including on ethical standards and safeguards.
Definitely. So how to control this would be a very key
Absolutely.
issue. And this all evolves into, developing the AI industry as well. So with that, what are the most urgent steps actually for developing countries that they actually need to stay competitive in this AI industry?
So I would say, and the way our report does it, we analyze countries that really need the basics, that are way behind or still at the starting line, right? Then we look at countries somewhere in the middle of the race, and we call those the transitioning countries. And then we look at the group of more advanced countries like South Korea. So for the basics, clearly the need to have universal, affordable internet access. Because without that, really there's very little one can get the benefits from. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then again, some basic literacy skills in digital and AI. Just think about it that when we used to say at the UN that it's important that everyone has a universal primary education. Now I would say it's important that everyone, from my grandparents to my children and grandchildren, should have basic digital and AI literacy. So there are some foundational things that are key, just as much as electricity. Then for that middle set of countries, that's where you're reskilling your labor force. You're looking at which particular sectors modernizing agriculture. It is amazing how AI can help us to improve productivity in agriculture. And most of our nations are agrarian even today. Yeah. And then looking at those ethical standards and governance structures that are critical if we're going to stay ahead. But then I look at this third group, where I would say South Korea is part of that, where the questions are a little bit different. Because if you're only looking at a race that involves 4, 5, 6 countries, you're running off on your own and you're leaving the world behind. And just think, how does that help the larger group? So AI to help peace and security, to stabilize and to make sure that the illegal economy that is also run through AI these days, whether there are scam centers, illegal trafficking, that stops. And much more regional and global cooperation, so countries can benefit from Korea, for example, with affordable tech, new capabilities. So that's the way, it's that arc of countries where our thing is take everyone with you. Because when you have big gaps, there's more displacement, there's more violence online, there's more dark economy stuff going on, and we all want to avoid that.
So definitely global cooperation
Absolutely.
is very crucial in this context. But another thing that's notable was that the report, it called for designing AI through the lens of people. Could you elaborate for our viewers? What does that actually mean in practice?
Well, I'll take a very strong example of that. So for example, currently, the majority of AI systems are male biased and are biased to higher income people, right? And because it learns as it grows, the self-learning keeps the bias accumulates and evolves. So you'll find that we need in a region in the world where a big gap is a gender gap, where women and girls are often the last thought about, but the first to lose their jobs, right? And have much less internet access. In fact, in our region, you'd think this was surprising, but it's close to half of women and girls don't own a smartphone. So it's already we're far behind. And so if AI will start mimicking human behavior with all those biases and discriminations and injustices. To shift that, you really need to put people and the most vulnerable people at the center. So if I ask on insurance, applying AI to the insurance industry, the bias is towards those with good incomes who can afford insurance. But what about the large number of informal workers? In this region, it's about 1.3 billion people who are informal sector workers, often without insurance. So if I want to use AI to improve insurance for those who are not protected, then I've got to break through that bias and actually look at designing AI systems that says, wait, who's the most vulnerable here? So that's the human and human development lens that UNDP brings to this issue.
So in order to, further expand cooperation in the sector, we just want to have a quick check on where South Korea's current standing is and how South Korea actually could help as a partner.
Oh, it's a very advantageous place that South Korea is in. For one thing, South Korea, in its engagement with UNDP, is still keen, and I hope it stays that way, to keep building fundamentals of governance, peace, and security. Because I think without that, you can't really grow some of the economic advantage that AI brings, or the social advantage that AI brings. So that's one. The second is it's a country that has always put forward some very strong principles and values based on its international cooperation. And that's key. So the fact that there should be more inclusion of people who are left behind. We should be in a country, for example, where we work closely with South Korea, like Afghanistan. We should look at women who are left behind and girls because their access to education and to employment is less. So that's key. If I look at another country where South Korea and UNDP work closely together, in Myanmar, there it has been, how do you reach those affected both because of the civil war, but also natural disaster, the earthquake, for example? And how do you get to them? And then use AI to make sure that the type of services are more accessible to people otherwise who are not even seen today. So there's lots of ways. It's not just about a technology. It's building institutions, safe regulations, really looking at economic opportunity for the disadvantaged. And a very recent, I'm just coming from Sri Lanka. My goodness, the recent floods is just destroyed so much social, physical infrastructure, human infrastructure. And you can never be prepared for this kind of massive onslaught because of climate change. So together with AI, we can help to improve, with Korea's support, better early preparedness and warning, early warning systems, even such massive disasters, and then help to rebuild stronger and better together.
That would be a fascinating idea, indeed. In fact, President Lee Jae-myung actually visited the Middle East and Africa as well. And he also emphasized the nation's will to expand AI cooperation with developing nations. How does that actually connect with the UNDP report's message?
Very much so, because a lot of this, we say, is not possible without both regional and cross-country, cross-regional collaboration. Now, not every country may agree on the same principles of collaboration. It's a world that's hurting right now in terms of how we cooperate. But I think you just need a group of countries who say, actually, we think there's good North-South and South-South cooperation that can help. Certainly regional cooperation in neighboring spaces, but also international cooperation. And last year, the UN General Assembly put forward and passed a convention on AI regulations, on safety, governance standards, which all countries in the world then can adhere to and agree on some of those standards that can cross country boundaries. Because things like AI, they are like, it can be the good part of a global public good, right? At the same time, it can be a very dangerous, if used badly, for countries that don't have the same rule of law, management structures, public institutions, and trust. So I think the G20 is a very powerful platform on which these messages and support can be reinforced as well.
Those global organizations and meetings would be definitely helpful. But you've touched upon Myanmar's example and Afghanistan's example a while ago. Could you tell us a little bit more on how South Korea and the UNDP had worked closely in terms of development in the past years?
You know, I'm really proud of the work we do together in tough places like this, because it takes staying power. These are not one-off projects. In these countries, people have been hurting for a long while. So you can't design this project by project. You have to look at a longer time frame. So the staying power is important. But when I think of the work we've done together on helping people recover much faster from economic crashes, from natural calamities like flash floods, like earthquakes. And when I look at things we do now on building better shelters, better schools and clinics, more flood mitigation, and add to that the early warning systems. I look back maybe 40, 50 years when UNDP worked to help rebuild and reconstruct South Korea. And I think that history of that partnership is something way beyond just the ODA. So it's way beyond financial assistance. It comes almost behind this partnership is a relationship of trust and a cultural engagement, I would call it, where one comes together because you believe in the same things and to help improve the life and the livelihoods of those who are hurting most. That, to me, is what's most precious about this relationship between South Korea and UNDP.
So it's great to see those concrete examples, and we will hope to look forward to Korea's role from a recipient to a donor in the near future as well. But looking ahead, we would want to ask, what are the UNDP's top priorities in this region, I would ask, and also what kind of roles do you hope to see Korea play?
It's again coming from lessons learned here and elsewhere. So one big area is the need for countries to move into that next generation of economic reforms. But you can't do that without the big governance reforms that underpin it. So managing policy change, making sure that public institutions grow and are more capable, including with AI systems and digital systems. But that space of economic reform with managing through governance systems is a big area. The second is climate. As climate change accelerates, coming in even more on adaptation work and bringing that into some of the most vulnerable communities to climate action is something that's a second major field. I would add to that then the three big accelerators of a digital economy, renewable energy that has to grow and can just be a game changer, and very importantly, affordable finance. So if I come back to the story of Sri Lanka, how can a country destroyed last week by what used to be a once-in-a-100-year kind of collapse of storms, right? How can they be expected to borrow at commercial rates or even non-commercial but still high rates in order to rebuild a country that was just coming out of an economic downturn? So looking at how a South Korea can provide more affordable finance and underpin with new financing instruments all these digital, renewable energy, climate adaptation and economic reform work and skills building. But fundamentally, people have to be able to afford it. Countries have to be able to afford it. That, I would say, is the biggest ask of this next phase of our cooperation.
Definitely. So it sounds like there could be a lot of potential ahead for the cooperation between UNDP and South Korea to play a bigger role moving forward. Thank you so much for your insights and for your time tonight, Ms. Wignaraja.
Thank you. Such a pleasure.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame tonight. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.